afternoon. My name is Kimberly Glover, and I'm going to be discussing Chapter 6 from our ESLP textbook. So Chapter 6 is titled First Steps to Literacy, English Learners Beginning to Write and Read. So an overview of our chapter is how may early literacy instruction be differentiated for English learners? What does research tell us about the early literacy development of English learners? Which forms and functions of print are required during early literacy development? And then how may English learners' early literacy development be assessed? Which classroom strategies can you use to promote English learners' early literacy development? How may family and community nurture early literacy development? So, what does research tell us about early literacy development? So, when English learners are reading, all learners are able to use their developed English language knowledge, their world knowledge, their knowledge of the world, and then their understanding of print conventions or words on a page. So, for all students, their literacy development is very complex, and it takes place over a longer period of time. And in this length of time, they're gradually approximating mature versions of both reading and writing. So they're building on skills as they grow and mature in their reading. Two differences between English learners and those that are native English speakers, reading and writing development are the students' English language proficiency and the ability to read and write in their primary language. Benefits of teaching children to read and write in their primary language are it's easier to read and write in a language you already know, and then the literacy skills can transfer from their primary language to English as English proficiency develops. And then other factors to consider with literacy development is obviously the student's cultural factors. Cultural factors can affect a student's literacy development and a classroom communication. And those factors could be the teacher's perception of the student's abilities, the student motivation, and then the teacher-student relationship. Because if you don't have that good relationship with your students, they may, their literacy may be not as high as a student you have a great relationship with. So 3 perspectives when you're reading. You have the reading readiness perspective, and the reading readiness perspective had a lot of hold during much of the 20th century, so a lot of people believed in this perspective. It was done off the maturation's theories of development, and proponents believe that children are not ready to read until they reach the mental age of 6.6, which is already, they're up into first grade, so this is postponing learning to read until first grade. Therefore, they're postponing continuing their writing skills. And then practices in kindergarten were influenced by the testing movement in the 1920s and 30s. And so some reading readiness skills they would talk about is auditory discrimination, visual discrimination, visual motor skills, and large motor skills. And this is the whole reading readiness assumption is based off the assumption that we need to be able to perform certain auditory, visual, psychomotor, and linguistics tasks in order to show a level of maturity and to begin reading instruction. So next you have the emergent literacy perspective, and this was pioneered by Marie Clay in 1975 in New Zealand, and Amelia Ferreiro and Anna Taborski in 1982 in Latin America. And it believed that children begin to develop the written language from the moment they are exposed to reading and writing at home and in the preschool years or even earlier. So the minute they begin to pick up a pen and start writing, they're emerging in their literacy. Young children develop literacy the same way as oral language through immersion in different social environments. So as your students are out in different situations, they're picking up on that orally. They're picking up on literacy skills through the oral and verbal communication. Where others are reading and writing for a variety of purposes. And then this is based on the assumption that oral and written language acquisitions are very similar. So you pick up on the writing based off your oral language skills. Then you have the balanced comprehension literacy perspective, which it combined emergent literacy practices with explicit skills instructions. And then in this balanced comprehension literacy perspective, you get the alphabetic principle, where there are 3 basic concepts. The speech string can be broken down into sounds or phonemes. Letters of the alphabet can represent these speech sounds, knowing letter sound correspondence provides a strategy for recoding words to written or from written to oral. And then this combined the emergent literacy practice with direct instruction on certain parts of reading and writing. So in the how print concepts and forms function to help literacy development, you have print concepts children develop in the emergent literacy phase. Students who are emergent readers and writers must know about aspects of print. They must know that the print tells us a message. You are conveying a message when your students are writing. Spoken words can be written down and remembered. Written words can be spoken and read out loud. Words are on a page are read from left to right and top to bottom in English. Words can be divided into sounds, so you can have one simple word and you can break that down into parts to let your students hear the sounds. And then the sounds are represented by letters or groups of letters in the alphabetic principle. And then you have a word has a linear sequence in time that corresponds to the written language linear sequence on a page. And you have sound symbol correspondence on are consistent in written language. So whatever sound you hear, you have a symbol to correspond with the sound. So this is a quote from our textbook. Phonemic awareness should not be considered a prerequisite for literary instruction. And this is very important because you should have that great phonemic awareness so you can hear the sounds. But even if you don't, you can still start picking up on your literacy instruction and working toward having that phonemic awareness. So alphabetic writing system connecting sounds and symbols. So Elizabeth Soulsby was a researcher, emergent literacy researcher in 1985. She looked at writings of 24 kindergartners who speak English, and she found 6 categories that students use as strategies as writing. And the strategies are writing via drawing, writing via scribbling, writing via letter-like forms, writing and reproducing well-learned sounds, unit or letter strings, writing via invented spelling, and writing via conventional spelling. Children may not use the letters to represent the sounds they hear. As they develop in their literacy skills, students will begin to associate letters with the sounds they hear. So they could start out writing by just scribbling or drawing lines on a page, and eventually work down to how they think they hear a word spelled to the actual spelling of the word. So, how may family and community nurture early literacy development? In all students, literacy development begins at that early age. Children at an early age are being exposed to signs all around the community, and this is also true of students from other countries. Examples of print that children are exposed to in their environment are the signs on the road, billboards, announcements in business and magazines, in doctors or dentist's office. Likewise, students are exposed at an early age in home, from all the books and magazines to the school announcements and bills to CDs and DVDs that our students may have access to in their home. So, family practices that promote literacy development. You're promoting literacy every time you read the newspaper or write out a list of things you do. Your child will see this and want to be just like their family. Therefore, they will want to copy what you're doing to gain and show they are gaining in literacy skills. Also, when you see a child pick up a pen or a crayon, that means they will start writing, wanting to write. So each time you let them write, you're promoting that literacy in them. When working with English learners with literacy concepts, and if another language other than English is spoken at home, we know that for early literacy to develop, exposure to those literacy events early on is what matters, not that language that the materials are in or the language that is spoken in the discussion. And then families promote literacy in different ways. by modeling your day-to-day uses, by giving children literacy materials such as paper, pencils, books. All of these you're able to promote that literacy skills in your students. And then this is a picture of a dad reading to his kids, and he's promoting that literacy development because he's exposing them to this literature so they'll pick up on their literacy skills. So what classroom strategies promote early literacy development? A classroom can be used in promoting literacy development is setting early literacy goals for all students. All students, no matter how old they are, need to develop these skills as they're beginning to read and write. So they need to be able to be aware and appreciate all purposes for reading and writing, understand the relationship between print and spoken language, knowledge of print conventions, which is left to right, top to bottom, and then the knowledge of basic phonics and word recognition strategies, and then the ability to identify a growing number of words on sight. So as they see their growing number of sight words as they get further in their literacy skills. So all 5 goals are done through holistic teaching strategies instead of explicit instruction, which it reinforces phonics and sight word recognition. And then holistic teaching strategies are literacy events that use reading and writing whole texts, such as the stories, poems, and songs. Other classroom strategies. In order to promote early literacy, you can create a literacy-rich classroom where you can use a play center with literacy, so students are able to see they're using and building their literacy skills while playing. For literacy development, you should make each center is made up of literacy props also, so students are able to develop literacy skills in a hands-on way than just reading, then writing and learning their letter sounds. Another classroom strategy for literacy development is using books. Have different books in the classroom and not just the ones you're going to read aloud to students. Let the students make their own books. This is a fun way for students to develop those literacy skills. And then have a collection of songs or poems, for example, that the students have worked on throughout the year, and they'll want to come back to them when gaining new literacy skills. And then you can use a classroom routine to help build literacy development. If you read the morning message to the students, they're picking up on literacy skills, and also can also be used with rules and a wall dictionary. So if you have rules and procedures and you're going through those with students, they can read them with you and they're building their literacy skills. And then how may English learners' early literacy development be assessed? In order to document students' progress, their literacy development, you can use a portfolio with both students reading and writing information together. For writing, you can select samples from student journals and orally read stories. For reading, you may want to include a list of the favorite stories. In the portfolio, you may want to have a checklist of students' knowledge of their sight words and sight words, letters, sounds, and symbols, and other word recognition strategies that may have been used. You may also want to include a holistic developmental checklist in order to note and observe reading and writing behaviors. Through the portfolio, you can collect and mark observations over time, then share your findings with individual students' progress with their parents. So how may early literacy instruction be differentiated for English learners? Start by taking into consideration our students' English language proficiency in addition to the literacy experiences each student has had both in their primary language and in English. Prior literacy knowledge in their native language where English is so critical because it lays the foundation for early literacy. To differentiate emergent literacy instruction, we need to assess what our students already know about forms and functions of print in English. And then you can use a checklist for early literacy development, which addresses these 6 categories: attitudes about reading and voluntary reading, concepts about books, comprehension of the text, concepts about print, writing development, and mechanics for writing. And so some last things to remember: literacy development starts at an early age. Your literacy development is changing over time, so it's a long, complex process. Cultural cultural factors can affect how a student is learning in their literacy development. Giving students concepts about print will help to further their literacy development to the next stage or skill. All children are picking up on literacy skills from their environment, community, and the world around them. And we can all use books and literacy props and centers in order to build a student's literacy development in a fun way. And then we need to take students' English language proficiency and expose to literacy into consideration when working with their literacy development. So thank you for watching, and I hope you've learned some about Chapter 6 and early literacy development in students. Thanks.